Well, build my gallows and build them high. Makes a long time climbing before I die. I want the chance.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Longbangers Week at Hibs in association with Lee Spirits. I'm Monty.
Hello, I'm Colin.
Good evening, I'm John.
How you both doing?
Oh, it may not be evening when you're listening.
No, we've done this one.
We're not doing that again.
Nah, that's old news.
Hiya.
How are you both?
Right.
Aye, fine.
Feel the enthusiasm and verve. Aye, all right. I spent the day in the car today. Had to run an errand for the family earlier on the day. So through in Edinburgh, waiting on somebody coming at an appointment. That was 3 hours and a bit in the car on the way back, and my daughter, her boyfriend, picked up. So she's driving now, but she's a learner, so she needs me in the car. So it was straight away again. And I was literally in 10 minutes before we sat down to record. We're going out at 12:30 today, and I've been in the car probably 90% of that time.
That'll be good for your back.
It's delightful, eh? Good job I've got the painkillers. Anyway, right, well, let's get down to the brass tacks of the episode. Before we do that, we never mentioned it on Saturday. That's only because we recorded before it had been announced. But the Hibs Ramble got in touch with us and down the slope about a ticket drive, which is a wee initiative to try and get season tickets to the games for people who might not otherwise be able to go. So full credit to the boys of the Ramble. They instigated this. This is kind of their idea, and we're along for the ride, really kind of riding on their coattails with it. So just watch out for our social media. Their social media, if you didn't already follow them on Twitter, go and have a look. And there's going to be loads of things for you to be able to get money towards it, things like competitions or football cards, or even just fucking straight out donating for it. So look out for that. It's a great idea, and we're really happy to be involved. And then the other thing is to look out for a competition next week that we'll have running over and above our usual win tickets to the game competition that we have, which is still running up until actually we'll extend it to Friday because it's a Sunday kickoff. Look at our Twitter. We've got that pinned on our profile. Next week we've got the chance to win one of these commemorative Hibs coins that Zenith Coins are producing. They've got a license with Hibs, so we've got one. It's a big sort of coin with a Hibs emblem on one side and a harp on the back, and we've also got a bottle opener and a pin badge and some trainer badges to give away as well. So
bottle opener. That's
a
topical.
bottle opener. Aye, I know. It's I don't know how far you would be able to throw it. It doesn't have the corkscrew or the foil cutter bit on it. So,
is it just a bog standard bottle opener, nothing else?
Aye,
okay.
it's more aerodynamic, I think, but less harmful. Right, so swings and roundabouts. It's
got a wee bit less mass, but
aye.
Okay.
And we will be checking that it's not getting used for getting launched onto football pitches before we give it away.
At the risk of being pedantic, by the way, see when this goes out to our non-subscribers, will those competitions likely be closed?
Yeah. I
hope so. I hope so.
Because you were saying next week, and I thought, next week, this is when the freeloaders were done.
Yeah.
If we had a phone line, we should put in that caveat of you can phone in competitions
like
closed, but you may still
exactly that.
If you're watching on catch up, if you're watching on catch up, yeah. So the competition will already be out if you're not a subscriber, and you might have seen it on our Twitter already, and you'll go, I can't what these cunts are talking about. That's what we're talking about. Right, John, what has been happening with Hibs this week?
Well, the thing I wanted to talk about was Nick Montgomery's article. Well, sorry, it was Liam Bryce's article. It was Nick Montgomery's interview with Liam Bryce. And it was titled Nick Montgomery Exclusive, Hibs Boss on Identity and Tactics. And I thought it was very timely that it came out, because it feels now that the ire amongst the Hibs support towards Nick Montgomery after a really shitty spell over the winter period had kind of calmed down a wee bit, so we're now able to sort of sit back and reflect. And there was a few things that I picked out for the article that I thought it would be a good opportunity to run by you guys, because I think out of the three of us, perhaps you two were maybe the more critical of Nick Montgomery.
How dare you?
But more than you,
Okay.
aye.
Nah,
So
Mr. Happy
the,
Clapper. Down at the bottom of my screen.
the first quote I'm going to pull out is from Nick Montgomery, where he says that I don't think the club was prepared this season for the number of injuries and the amount of boys who went on international duty at a really important point. Recruitment was vital to get us back into a position where we were competing. And with regards to identity, he mentioned the work that him and Sergio Raimondo had done before he came in, and he looked at the players that he had at his disposal, and he described those players. He described them as a really good group of professionals, but what he wanted to do was have Hibs be a team who were on the ball, but he also had to do something with Hibs in the meantime until he was able to achieve that vision. So he mentioned Christian Doidge, who was perhaps the only player who could play a direct style of football in that side. And then Christian Doidge got injured.
Mhm.
And that's a recurring theme throughout the article, where he talks about the type of football that he wanted to play, the players that he had at his disposal, the players who were filling in, who then subsequently got injured as well. So Josh Campbell was one of them. He also mentioned lack of squad depth, and he cited Jair, who we've talked about, a defender,
yeah.
and he said that he hadn't played him for 14 months as an example. And I think overall, the question I'd want to ask you two, and maybe even the listeners, how, like on reflection, how do you view your opinions of Montgomery in that really challenging period, especially the part that he mentions about the club being unprepared for the number of injuries that we had and the number of players that went on international duty, leaving us short?
Colin, do you want to jump in first?
Aye, so unprepared. I read that article this morning. I never really took it as like a dig at the club, but the way that came out there, it's almost like he's saying that they weren't prepared, because we would have known how many were going on international duty, so we should have been prepared for that. I think injuries, you can't really, you can't prepare for it because you don't know who's going to get injured. You just need to have some kind of contingency in the squad to help cover it. So I think we should have known how many, or had an idea how many were going on international duty, and we should have prepared for that. So I don't think that's great that we never. But he couldn't have done anything about that, could he? Because he was in. That's a Lee Johnson thing.
Yeah.
Because he would have known Walcott, Rocky, Boyle, Miller. Maybe not Miller, because
Miller was the wild card with it, wasn't he? Like when he wasn't in contention until it kind of came around.
Maybe after the last the summer window, so but the other three were always going. I can't remember who in the January. Is that all it was?
Yeah, Walcott, Boyle, Rocky, and Miller, 4 of them. That's
and
4 or 5.
That, you wouldn't have thought that's really because Walcott's the second choice goalie anyway. Rocky, Boyle were obviously first team picks, and Miller was purely, well, he still is, still because of injuries, because of other injuries that we did know about already. But we should have known that. We should have been prepared for that. I agree with him on the injuries front. You can't. I don't know if you can prepare for injuries. As I said already, you kind of stock the squad in a way.
Do you think that's the squad depth point that you mentioned, that there was just a lack? So you can't prepare for injuries, but you can have backups there, and it seems like we didn't have the necessary quality and backups to come through to fill those gaps.
He was unlucky that he got multiple injuries to like the same position, like Doidge and Lafondre, for example, both being injured at the same time. And then when you take Boyle out of the equation, it's effective
midfield.
Midfield. And then Karen was already injured at the start of the season, and you bring Miller in, and as soon as you lose him, then we're down to Megwa or Whittaker. Megwa had obviously gone out on loan.
Yeah.
If Miller didn't get the call up, we're all right. Like that issue doesn't happen. So there's a bit of planning, but also there's a limit to how many right backs you can have in the team. You're kicking their heels. You can only play one at a time. I think the thing that I took from it, John, when you're asking about the kind of the hindsight aspect, is the reflection. I don't think it's just a Hibs fan thing. Fans didn't give a fuck about the reasons. a lot of the time, right or wrongly, right? And I think it's
The results-driven business. The media keep telling us that.
it is right, and I think like for all the thing, I think we've always, I think anyway. From I hope I'm no sort of rewriting history here, but I think we always sort of caveated the fact that there was injuries and players not available, and that was having an impact on results. I think the question is still is could we have done better during that time? Like, was there a better setup that we could have played? Could we have like? I'm trying to think how to word it right, but even if you take out our best players, do we still have a squad that costs more, like is more valuable, better players than the teams that were beating us? And that's probably where that argument falls down about the injuries and the internationalists. I bet is that you still go right. To the extent, I don't think, and this is no disrespect to, I'll use Whitaker and Jair as examples here. When they came in, how many teams are they walking into, like across the league, as a first team starter?
How many? How many do you think?
None. Right. So I think they might. I think they would be squad players. I think they would feature Whitaker purely on the fact that he's 16 and he's got a lot of development to do. Nothing to do with talent or the boy's character. There's no slight on him whatsoever. But I would say it's borne out by how few 16-year-olds play top flight football in Scotland that most teams would choose not to have a 16-year-old playing for them. Jair never kicked the ball for us for 14 months. Came in team, did well, but then sort of didn't do as well after that. And I'm not convinced he would get into like in a starting 11 spot most teams in the league.
But so you were saying there before about like injuries and like the question maybe could have been, could we have done better? And you're saying that we've got a better squad that costs more, but then you're using two examples that wouldn't walk into another side.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm saying. That's where I'm challenging my own point with it, John. It's basically saying like, so although we've got a squad that costs more, if you actually look at the key positions, we were relying on players. So I was saying like we probably should have given more allowance for that.
Okay.
But
what do you think? What did you think about the identity aspect of the interview and the identity that Montgomery's trying to create? Because that's something like the bingo card rears its ugly head again, where you're never quite like the criticism is often what's their identity, and he talks about trying to create an identity, a team that is on the ball, and he mentions something about I think Scottish football. Like we don't often like to see the ball going backwards in an effort to retain possession.
Yeah.
So that's their identity. How happy are you guys with that identity?
Happy.
But what does it? I'm not sure what it means. Like on the ball. So is he? Remind me. Is he saying that he doesn't want the ball passed backwards, or is he saying that you need to understand that the ball will get passed backwards because we're on the ball and we're in control of it? Because I think I'm thinking the latter is the way I read it.
I think the latter is how I understood it as well.
Aye. So I'm okay with that. I understand that you need to pass the ball backwards, but I get because it frustrates me when I sit at the ground and I hear folk going, "Get it fucking forward," and you think, but they kick it forward, they've got to lose the ball. Like you gain it away, but folk think that that's a more positive action than keeping it and going ahead with it. But that sounds to me like a, and I'm not saying when I say this that I'm educated, but it's an education piece that we sometimes are going to pass it back. I mind Neil Lennon did it with the Celtic fans because they got booed in a European game and he was like, "Fuck are you all doing it? We're trying to keep the fucking ball here." And then that gradually spread because that's how you need to tell people you're doing it and that's why you're doing it so that you didn't just get it in the mixer chat.
I think part of the problem we had was we weren't very good with passing it back and still keeping the ball.
Aye.
Do you know like that? Because for whatever reason, whether it's the players that we had or the system we were playing or whatever, it wasn't like we were going back and then going forward and doing that successfully. We were passing it back and we just weren't getting near the goal. It happened with Maloney as well, where we would go backwards And we went game after game almost with like no shots on target under Maloney for a spell. And I think that's where folk understandably get frustrated with it. There's no point having that as your identity if you're never attacking. But I think what we've seen now is why you do it and why it's effective. Like, so if you've got the players to do it and you keep the ball and then it culminates in an attack but with a different focal point, if you like, then I think folk will moan about that. I think then they sort of see a purpose to it. It was when just nothing was happening, we'll lose the ball anyway, or you can see the fucking goal from it, which would happen.
Another one that I was how like passing it out for the back is the other one. Why are we passing it out for the back? When we scored a goal for passing it out for the back, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, if we're trying to keep ahead of the ball, just launching it into the middle of the park, which is the other option, the no passing it out for the back, it's just a 50-50 ball in the middle of the park. But by passing it to Rocky or Fish or one of the fullbacks, the ball's in we're in control of the ball. We're trying to find the space in the gaps with it rather than just taking a 50-50 bottle up. But there's like I don't know if people could see it, like including ourselves. I don't mean wonder about it. What the fuck are we doing with it? We're just passing it. Rocky taking the by kick can Rocky's take the by kick and passing it to Marshall and that. And it's a wee bit like, well, tell us why you're doing it and help us understand, and then but if you just do it and there's no real obvious reason for it, folk are no understanding it. So educate us, which is hopefully what that article is started, I suppose. Tell us why you're doing it, tell us what the reasons are, and then when we start seeing the benefits of it, we'll probably run it and rave about it and be delighted, and then that'll become when next time they do just launch it into the middle, we'll be fucking doing that.
Yeah, something. I think the fact that we can see it coming together now, and it's one of the things that I took for the article was the long-term plan. So Montgomery's had this. He's not just looking for a quick fix and try to get a result on a Saturday. It's like, right, ideally you will have a result on a Saturday, but how are we winning games in a year's time by playing a certain way and so on. And the things he was talking about having the women's team there and that sort of unity at the training centre and all being one club. There was like a bigger bit of work there that he's been focusing on than just the 90 minutes on a Saturday with the first team.
Sorry, Nico.
So I definitely felt that he sounds like a man that's building something. Rather than like say, you never felt that with Johnson. For example, Johnson felt like a guy that came in and he was bothered about the first team and that was it. There was no real long-term plan. I think he ever saw a long-term future at Hibs. It feels different with Montgomery, especially when you read that article.
I thought the way that the article closed off when he was talking about the Foley investment and the players that might allow him to recruit in the future made me think of Marcondes now, and at least part of the difference that he's made to Hibs midfield and the linking up of midfield and attack, and what we might get is a number 10 in future, because that seemed to be the missing link in addition to some of the other players that had come back from injury.
I totally agree. I thought it was interesting. Like I would thoroughly encourage anybody to go and have a read for themselves and kind of make up your mind. Had your opinion changed on anything, John, after it?
Nope. No, because I think these are some of the points I've tried to. I didn't mean to be I've been saying since day one type, but I've always tried to argue the possible mitigating factors, and I think actually one of the things that article in that interview allowed everyone, I think, to have a greater insight into was the number of different options that Montgomery was trying to do to try and play his style of football to try and implement that identity. And he also goes on to say about the introduction of the better players. And hopefully that ties in with what we were saying about the investment in the side as well, which is hopefully going to not mean that that we have to wait until a January transfer window to realise just how poor things are or just how challenging conditions are. Hopefully we can now go, right, well, we can start planning for the departure of Marcondes or the departure of Maulida, etc. So I'm still Team Montgomery.
I think the takeaway I had apart from what we said about longevity was definitely about It's a question about how do you keep fans on board when things are stacked against you. So when you have all the players missing through injury or suspension, and because a manager can't come out and say this is why we're losing games because nobody wants to hear it, and that's the facts of it. Everybody goes, that's just excuses, and it's the reasons more than excuses. Do you know what I mean? Like these are genuine mitigating factors, but people don't want to hear about it. So how do you keep focusing? Things you need. Had he been in a season and had done well for a season, then he gets a spell like that, it's an easier ride. It was because he had no credit in the bank and no, like
I don't know.
body of evidence behind him.
I don't know if that argument rings true because you had Jack Ross get emptied however many months into a second full season.
Did Ross have the same issue with injuries though? I'm trying to remember the circumstances. I'm sure he had a few, but
I think Jack Ross had the same issue in terms of recruitment. What was it they said? What's the thing that's often applied? All he was looking for was a centre half and another striker or something.
So maybe that's maybe something to take away then, like as a supporter, is like do you try and be a bit more patient and cut a manager slack when things are bad, and they were bad. Like they kind of peaked with that St Mirren game where it was like one of the worst games of football I can remember Hibs playing. Yeah.
That was when we spoke about getting relegated. Remember? John, I think you said we'd be better getting relegated or something. I can't remember the exact thing.
Have you ever heard a story? I think it was Arthur C. Clarke, and it's called "The 9 Billion Names of God." I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I'll maybe send you a link to it, and anyone that wants to Google it, go and Google it. However, I think that if you answer the question that you asked, Matty, about how do you keep fans on side through when times are tough, that's probably the time where you close the door on football. It's probably one of the reasons why we talk about it so much, because we want to understand these things, we want to gain a greater insight, and we want better results for our football team at the end of it.
Yeah, I think that's fundamentally where it comes from. You want to be entertained, you want the team to do well, and when it doesn't happen, you get frustrated, and somebody's normally at the sharp end of that frustration. Colin, you got anything for us this week?
It seems quite a week. There was a tactical piece, but I'm not going to get into it. That understands it.
The tactical piece is really, it does, and it's really interesting. And I think, what is it, Craig Nisbet 9125 Analysis, who we've had on Longbangers before. It is. I read it, and for people who have a mind for that kind of thing, I think it's really, really good. Like, if you're really interested in the tactical side of the game, definitely go and have a read of it. I learned a little bit from it. I need to go and spend a little bit more time understanding it, but it's definitely worth a read.
And it links in with that 4-4-2 thing, because that was a thing that Montgomery was getting battered by, and this explains how he was trying not to do 4-4-2, but maybe the players didn't quite. Basically, Marcondes has changed that because he understands what the 4-2-3-1 is versus what the 4-4-2 is.
That's what he was saying in that. Montgomery was saying in his article, his interview with Bryce, was like whether it's 4-4-2, 4-2-4, 4-2-3-1, they're all an adaptation of each other, and you need the players to play that system. And I think overall what we were saying was injuries stopped us having stopgaps there that would help us play that, and then we got the players in that can fill those roles.
But it was one of those things. It's like it started the complaint, and it just kind of snowballed into that was what he's stubborn. It was all he'll never change it, or he can't change it. He's no plan B, and it was all the same thing. It was all about formation.
But do you remember the first couple of games that he came in, and it was folk were saying, 4-4-2, like folk thought it was outdated, but actually maybe it's going to enjoy a renaissance.
Yeah.
And actually, that made me think about what Montgomery was saying about the club not being prepared for injuries and international duty. I think that comment made at a completely different time could be seen as an attack on the board, but I didn't view it that way whatsoever. And I guess it's context and based on the results and like the last, like that little, we're now 5th in the league, whereas previously we were 7th, and Christ, we're not going to make top 6.
Okay, let's look ahead to Sunday. Scottish Cup quarter-final. Forces of Darkness coming east of the road. Again, they're playing at the moment. I think the 1-0 up as we're
Still
recording.
Yeah.
So what we're hoping for is that game to take just a whole load out of them, to expend a whole load of effort.
Injuries would be nice.
That kind of thing. John, what are your thoughts for the game on Sunday?
I think, the optimist in me thinks that we've got a really good chance of beating them. It's not like we talked about when Hibs played Forfar, and the dynamics of league competition compared to cup competition are just a wee bit different. And I wonder if that kind of thing will maybe play in our favour, because we've really got nothing to lose, but other than the game before anyone gets smart.
Yeah, we know what you meant. It's all right.
But we've got nothing. Like, it's a cup game. Like, it's a toss of the coin. It's 50-50. So, and I think
is it a must win? No, it's not.
Nah, I think
it's a must win though to get through. Otherwise,
I mean, if you want to win the Scottish Cup, then yes, it is a must win.
I think for the club to realise its aims and its ambitions and its KPIs or whatever this year, then like, you want to be making the next round. What's the next round? Is it the quarters or
semi?
Semis.
Yeah.
Oh well,
that's got
it's got a wee bit extra spice to it, isn't it? So like, if Hibs were to get to Hampden, would folk view it as a relatively successful season? Probably, arguably.
No, unless we win it. I mean, I've had that discussion before. It's no success unless you win it.
I always say that mentally, like, just like I can understand the logic. Like, if you've not won the cup, then it's not successful. But it's all relative, isn't it? Like, there's relative success, and getting to a final, getting to a semi-final can be. It's like what's like a conditional success? Do you know, you used a mitigated success. Like, it's like the opposite of an unmitigated disaster. You go, well, this is a mitigated success. It's like we've not won the fucking thing, but it's still been a good cup run.
Yeah. What I was going to say was, I've got another weird analogy. I was reading something recently, and I've not checked the math in it, but seemingly, if everyone in the world was to have a square goal, you would only have to navigate 33 rounds until you were crowned world champion. And comparing that to Scottish football, like, there's only 3 competitions that Hibs can win. But within those 3 competitions, there's 38 league games for the league, plus the other variables that you need to take into account. And the Scottish Cup, how many fixtures have you got there? And the League Cup, how many you've got there? And so on and so forth. Like, it's not easy to win these things. And I think that's why we start talking about things like relative success. Like, if we get to the semi-final and we get knocked out, it'll be shite, but you could maybe reflect on the season that you've had and go, right, well, we lost the manager first 3 games. We've had that overhaul. We've had that massive doom and gloom period over Christmas. And you go, actually, maybe it wasn't that bad after all.
It's funny though, setting a KPI to get, like, for a cup, because you don't know who you're going to draw. You could have got Celtic away in the first round. I think the hardest game you could probably the hardest game you could get. And then you go out, and then you go, well, that was a failure. And you go, well, it's luck of the draw, eh? Like, and getting Rangers in the quarters is luck of the draw. It could have been away to fucking Morton. You know what I mean? So there's different things there. But I always find it funny setting a KPI on the cups, because I get the budgeting for it, but you should just budget for the first round, and then because that's what you're guaranteed.
Do you think that applies to the fans as well, though? Like, we're talking about things like success and relative success. Like, we as football fans know that there's things like injuries, players, sackings, all that sort of stuff that disrupt the season. So how do we at the start of the season go, well, we should be finishing 4th? Or 3rd or whatever?
Well, it's basically...
That's budgetary as well, isn't it?
Aye. I mean, and that, obviously the cup's broadly the same. Obviously the difference with the cup is the draw aspect, but you have that random factor that you could, in theory, win the cup by playing nibby decent. You know, like, you could just luck your way
like
through.
Hearts.
Correct, right? So you could do it, and you still celebrate that as much as if you'd had the toughest fucking tie every round to get through. I sort of get, like, it's still, and the history tells you it's still the teams, the best teams win the cups most often. right? You have the exceptions now and again. But Rangers and
Rangers have
Celtic
got a VAR penalty
against them.
It's in Europe, so it's allowed.
Danger.
Oh, yeah, fucker.
Remember, different rules, different. Anyway, carry on, mate. Sorry, but it's just that I
no,
was
no,
watching
you're
it,
alright.
and that's a handball. He'll not even get sent to the screen, but he is getting sent to the screen.
It's a historic moment.
Is it?
I'm glad we're here for it. I'm glad we're here for it.
Peter's just coming with his arm out, eh? Like
Aye,
Superman
little bit of blood. He's obviously forgotten he's in Europe. Eh? He's fucking punch us away.
Lundstrom tried to go down with the head knock and that to take the thing away from it, as if to say, I've got a head knock, we're in the box, mind you need to stop the game and that.
Aye.
And I've stopped it to check the handball. Anyway, carry on and I'll button when they get
Aye, so I was just going to say, like, Rangers and Celtic have the main Scottish Cups at everybody because they tend to be the better teams. So it is difficult to win the Cup. It's crazy given the season we've had that, like, we've had this wee upturn and it's early days still since the January window finished. Fourth still isn't out of the question, and a cup run still isn't out. Did he give it? Is he brilliant? A cup run still isn't out of the question. So we've already been to Hampden once. We could have another trip. We could be back another twice, really. And even though it's felt like a really, really shit season, we could be fourth and win the cup. And then everybody will talk about how fucking brilliant the season has been.
Aye. Yeah.
But is this though why you should always look for the reasons for optimism in even the worst of seasons?
Aye, maybe it is, but I suppose it's. I think you live it. You live it through just how you're feeling at the time.
But I think this is probably a helpful or a timely reminder of how quickly things can change, because it feels like, remember when I came on, I think was it the Aberdeen game, and I said to you, like, I don't know how I'm feeling about this, because normally when I come into Longbangers, especially, well, probably for the last 4 years or so, I feel like I'm always on the defensive. But we've had, like, and you made the comment about feeling like Hibs are going backwards, and it, like I said, like, it all felt like doom and gloom. And then with a matter of a couple of weeks, we get the right results, other results go our way, suddenly we're in fifth, and we're thinking, oh Christ, we could be fourth. There's an opportunity. It's not the question mathematically to become fourth. And possible trip to Hampden on the horizon.
I think, though, it's important to acknowledge how that's happened. That's happened because there was major surgery done on the team. Like, it's almost like a different team second half. That's kind of how I resonate, reconcile it, in my head, is we were shit for ages, but then we made the team better. And it's no coincidence then that results and performances got better. So you can be optimistic about it. It's almost like you can write off that first part of the season and go, it's a different team. We've got this positivity because we've got better players in. We could achieve more second half of the season than we did in the first because we've got different players. So that's kind of how I see that's where my optimism comes from. It.
See the game. So we've got the game on Sunday. Do we also then have Ross County on the Wednesday, the game in hand? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think if the result doesn't go our way on Sunday, we need to remain optimistic going into that game and not let the result on Sunday affect the league, because we're still focusing on other stuff.
100%. Sunday's no make or break for the season. Like, I don't think it would be good to win it, but we need to win.
Still looking for 3 points at Dingley.
Aye. And the mental thing is, if you're no subscriber, you'll already know what's happened on Wednesday night. So this could be rubbish, or it might be bang on. Who knows? Right, we're out of time. Colin, John, thanks very much for your time this evening. Thanks everybody for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Well, they trailed me down when I broke free. I drank all the whiskey in Tennessee.